Florida's on a roll again this week. FWC just approved a black bear hunt, and people online reacted like someone shot Smokey the Bear mid-TikTok dance and teabagged him in front of a Girl Scout troop.
Who hasn't done that?
Meanwhile, offshore, sharks are treating everything like it's Shark Week meets DoorDash. Snapper eggs changed more than a politician's side chick, and up north of State Road 70, that is, the turkeys are done gobbling way before the first camo-clad dipshit ever climbs into the stand. That's a shout out to Mike Sumner for that. Oh, and since we're here and on Lake Okeechobee, they're spraying herbicides like it owes them money. That lake's like one more chemical cocktail away from being classified as a biohazard salad. So yeah, shit's weird, especially here in my hometown. But on today's episode, we have got Dr. Mark Barton in the hot seat, an actual wildlife biologist, and not just some guy who yells, "Trust the science," between tequila shots on Facebook. Isn't that right? And we've also got Captain Mike Murray, which means at least 3 government agencies are going to hate this episode, and YouTube will pretend it doesn't exist like he's fucking Voldemort of conservation. Yeah, I wrote that one myself.
I'll drink to that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so meanwhile, every time Mike's on the show, we get shadow banned harder than a stripper in church. And of course, we have Oscar back in the studio today, aiming below the belt and asking the stuff that gets us banned from LinkedIn. We're going to lose sponsors before the first whiskey break. Wait a minute. We don't have sponsors because no one wants to put their logo on whatever the this is. So this is the Salt Lake Worldwide Podcast, and we're here to ruin somebody's day. And with that said, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Wait, are we trying to ruin my day? Well,
No, not as far as you know.
Welcome to Salt Lake Worldwide Podcast, your ultimate destination for hunting, fishing, conservation, and gear. From international hotspots to the backwoods of America, we bring you the real stories, raw opinions, and the conversations others won't have. Buckle up. The adventure starts now.
Thanks for me on, guys. Definitely excited to be here. Some interesting topics you guys wanted to cover, so can't wait to dig into them.
Yeah, we've been chatting off camera, so this is going to get real in a hurry today. I have a sneaking suspicion. Well, before we dive into that, though, for our listeners who haven't come across you guys yet, and your multiple platforms now, because you're getting everywhere, Swamp and Stomp, and you've got the podcast. Was it the Scientific Outdoorsman? Is that right? Did I get that right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's the one I've been binging on when I've been at PT every day. So just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you guys do.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this short because I can make this a pretty long story, but I got to start from the beginning. I have to point out that like this all started because I grew up in Europe. A lot of people don't know this, and hunting was just like never an option that I had growing up. Like I didn't even know it was like a thing people did. So when I came to the States, it was like, and mind you, I am American. I was born here. I just like kind of grew up most of my life over there. When I came back to the States, it was like, wait, people actually hunt? This is like a real thing. And so I never could find anybody to show me the ropes. I could never find somebody to kind of like teach me how to do this. And so I had to teach myself. And there's a lot of people that are kind of in the same shoes. But the problem is there's no resources, that like if you watch like the Hunting Public and stuff like that, all this Midwestern stuff, there's, it's not really applicable to Florida. So once I kind of started figuring it out, I was like, you know what? Like I want to document my experiences and my lessons so that people have that resource that I was missing. So that's kind of where the YouTube channel started. And frankly, like I never thought anybody would actually watch it. But they did, and people were super excited about it, and it just started growing like crazy. And that's kind of where it all started. From there, I got invited to join the board of the Florida chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. I've been working with them for about 6-7 years. I don't even know how long I've been on that board. And because of my background in science, like while all this was happening, I was doing my PhD down in Miami at FIU. So I really was trying to find ways that I can like take that scientific viewpoint and bring that into not only hunting but conservation. And those, those three things, they come together really nicely, and that's kind of been my focus lately. So, like you said, I've got that podcast, The Scientific Outdoorsman, and that's kind of what we try to do there. Is like we try to sort of dive into the science and understand what the researchers are learning through their data, and then try to apply that to hunting. Like how can we use that information to be better hunters, better managers, So yeah, I mean, that in a nutshell, that's kind of my thing. Like I'm all about bringing the science into hunting, conservation, and I'm just an outdoor nerd, man. Like I live for this stuff, Um, my wife is usually about a month into season, she's over it, but but she knows how important it is to me, and well, we're about 2 weeks in now, 3 weeks in, so
With a long way to go.
Yeah, it's true.
yeah,
Both of my ex-wives think the same.
she's starting to get fed up, but I got a little bit of a break coming up here in a little bit, and then doing some outstate trips. So, I gotta earn some points back with her.
Yeah, been there. I've been there. Still there, as a matter of fact. I got a 3-week-old at the house, so my hunt season's going to be a little sporadic this year, needless to say. But yeah, so I found you from Swamp and Stomp. That's how I found you, actually, on YouTube, not your socials. I found you there, started following you on your socials, then found out about the podcast, and I think you've actually, if I'm not mistaken, you've created another YouTube channel, right? Is it Mark Goes Outdoors? Is that right?
Yeah, Mark Goes Outside. So, well, you guys, honestly, I'm coming on this podcast at the perfect time for me to go public about this. So, like, I've never even said this out loud in public, so this will be the first time I'm announcing this. But
Our first drop.
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, as you can probably imagine, like Swamp and Stomp, we started it 6-7 years ago, and over that time, the guys that did Swamp and Stomp, me, Danny, John, our lives have taken us in sort of different directions. And so for a while, we were kind of trying to figure out what to do with Swamp and Stomp. So last year we weren't super active. And while we were kind of trying to figure things out, I started Mark Goes Outside. Well, we've recently figured things out, and I've taken over Swamp and Stomp fully now. So I'm the sole owner. And so Mark Goes Outside was kind of like an offshoot of that, but now I'm really trying to turn that into my fishing channel. So that one's going to be focused on fishing and all the non-hunting stuff, and then Swamp and Stomp's really just going to be focused on all the hunting things. And Swamp and Stomp's kind of changing structures now. It's actually it's becoming a nonprofit organization, the Scientific Outdoorsman Foundation, and all of my social medias will be housed under that nonprofit organization. And the whole point of it is to raise money to get me and other scientific representatives to, our meetings to make sure that the hunting community, the fishing community are being represented by people that really do understand the science,
Yeah, and I've noticed too, listening to the podcast, I mean, you're all over the place. You were in Colorado not long ago, and I mean, you've had some great guests too, with FWC, and just you kind of really dive into the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on. And I mean, I really enjoy it. I mean, I kind of get lost in a little bit as I'm, that's kind of you're now like one of my top 3 podcasts that I listen to. And I always go back to there now, like because it's just like, 3 normal dudes that happen to be, PhDs for the most part, I assume, and they're way smarter than I am. But I'm like, well, shit, they put this in a way that I can understand it. And I like the way that you recap the research, the studies, the science that's going into it. I really enjoy that part. I mean, it may get lost to some people, but I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, and as a scientist, like I say this all the time, I think one of the biggest faults in the scientific community is that scientists are really bad at communicating with the lay person, the average Joe, the people that don't necessarily understand the science, and being able to sort of relay scientific information in a way that the average person will understand it is so important. And it's something that's not done well. So that's really the goal of our podcast, is to try to break down that science and make it digestible for everybody.
What is carrying capacity?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, but I like to me he dumbs it down. Like, and listen, you don't look like a typical biologist or conservationist or doctor that we've had on the podcast. You don't fit that normal mold, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons that I'm like,
Hold that
oh,
thought. Hold that thought. How about now?
oh, there you
my
go, Mike. You got your clip-ons? Yep. Never go home without them.
Well, I got my headphones on, so
Ah,
I'll trump
shit.
you with my
He did
clicks
drop
later.
that he went to FAU, right?
FIU.
FIU.
FIU. There's a
Alright,
difference.
I
Yeah.
went to
sorry.
FAU.
Whoa, FIU, not FAU. Come on.
Oh,
Hey,
I'm
easy
sorry.
there, Chief.
Go Panthers.
Fighting owls, you know what I mean? Although I will say, when we used to have the engineering conferences, you all had the best good-looking Latina girls. So that's besides the point.
I mean, you're not wrong. There's definitely a lot of good-looking Latina girls down there.
I'll drink to that.
Well, that went sideways in a hurry. Oh shit! Perfect. Well, you know what? I'd be remiss if we didn't start with the black bear thing, especially on the heels of what happened yesterday.
Kill them all. No, just kidding.
I don't know if you saw. I shot a reel. I posted it. Have you seen the reel that I posted yet? Did you have a chance to
Travel?
look at that yet?
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so that came out yesterday. I was in meetings. Oscar was texting me and a bunch of other people and sending screenshots and like, it got approved. And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. So I made just a regular, social media post. I'm like, yeah, finally, we're getting bear hunting again. And it's such a great thing. And oh my God, the hate I got from that really inspired me to cut a reel today. And I did. And I threw everybody under the fucking bus about the bad science. And I think that's the problem with it is these people think with emotion and they don't think with science. They really have no fucking clue what's going on. And I gave it to everybody today. And a normal short for me is like 30, 45 seconds. Like I dragged that on for 3 minutes. It was a giant rant.
Yeah, no, I mean you hit the nail on the head. I was at the meeting yesterday as well. I've been at all the meetings. I've been pretty involved with that process. So hearing that unanimous vote, that was a huge win. Definitely something to celebrate. So maybe I should grab some tequila.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this has been 2015, right? So that's when we had the last bear hunt. It was 2015. So we've been a decade without bear hunts in Florida, all because, in my opinion, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, shit hit the fan of the last bear hunt, and all of a sudden there was a lot more bears than they thought they were. And somebody said, "Oh, we got to pump the brakes now that we may not have our numbers right."
I mean, I don't really agree with that statement.
No, it's fine. Call me out like a dumbass. That's fine. People do it all the time.
We're not doctors.
There's a lot of opinions out there. And unfortunately, a lot of them are not based in science. And also, unfortunately, that is the truth for both sides of the argument. There's, like you said, there's like a lot of people that are really emotional about it. And like, oh my God, we shouldn't hurt bears. They're little teddy bears. There's those people, but there's also in the hunting community, there's a lot of people that just like, they just have opinions on how they think the population looks and what it's structured like and how we should be managing it. They don't understand the science. They don't know, what the FWC scientists know. They don't know what I know. I've read literally the majority of the black bear literature, not just Florida, but other states too. I have a pretty good handle on the science that's out there. And we really know a lot about our population of bears here in Florida. And the proposal that FWC put together, I mean, I'll go as far as to say it's like a masterpiece, and people might not agree with that, but I don't think they really understand like the politics that are involved in it. The way that they handled it, the way that they addressed the concerns of the anti-hunters, to make this hunt as palatable as possible for everybody. Truly, was like they did an incredible job. Like I was really impressed with them. So I think FWC deserves props on that. Like, people give them a lot of hate, but they really did a great job with this thing.
So to segue, from that, so obviously my statement, about there was more bears than we gave it credit for. So what was the determining factor there? So then, are you saying there wasn't as many bears? What was the culprit behind that? Pump the brakes, stop to that initial bear season, and the 10 years following to get to where we are now.
Well, what brought that hunt to a screeching halt, really? Like, I mean, there was a number of factors, but one of the big factors was the lawsuit. The anti-hunters sued the shit out of FWC. And FWC, like, I mean, even people at FWC have said this, and I'm not going to drop any names, but they just didn't do a great job with the defense. They weren't prepared for that lawsuit. And, it just became such a political issue that, the governor just kind of pulled the plug on it and said, we're not touching this for now. Going into this one, they knew that was going to happen. They knew that there was litigation coming, and they've probably already received, lawsuits in the mail since yesterday. People had them drafted up and ready to go, and the anti-hunters were, proudly like saying that they had them ready to go. But FWC is prepared for it this time. They have the scientific data. They have the data analysis done. They know exactly what the arguments are going to be, and they know exactly how to debunk those arguments.
I didn't know. Did you guys know anything about the lawsuit? I didn't. That's
That's first I've heard.
Yeah,
of it.
me
Yeah,
too.
I didn't
There
know
was a
there
lot
was
of
a lawsuit.
emotion last time and a lot of statements made. But
Yeah, well, and you're talking to 3 hunters here, and that just goes to
Yeah.
a little bit to show about how little, some of that stuff actually gets to the general, or what we intake. I guess where people are very quick to jump on social media and see what's going on and jump to conclusions, but there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that, like, people, there's so much information coming out in, social media, on Instagram, whatever. And people say things with a lot of confidence, and it's easy to believe them when they say things that confidently. And that's what happens. People hear something, they start telling their friend with confidence because they heard it confidently. And before you know it, there's just all this misinformation out there, and, nobody has the real story. There's just not a lot of fact checking happening these days anymore, and I think it's still pretty important to do that.
Mark, as a PhD, with the whole bear thing, like just reading the comments and everything and stuff, like you would think out of these less than 200 tags that have been allocated, you would think that they're gonna, like they're just like, oh, there's 200 bears left. The state of Florida has just allowed them, Floridians or out of state people to shoot all 200 bears.
I read a statement today that said it was, and Mark, you would know better than anybody, is 4,000 bears, I think, the 4,000 black bears in the state of Florida.
Yeah, so I can touch on that a little bit. So basically, the 4,000 number was from the last count, right? The last census. And there's really 2 types of data that FWC uses to estimate our bear populations. One, they use these like hair corrals, and this is like a really expensive study, but unfortunately bears are really cryptic animals. So in order to get a good count on them, like it takes a lot of money. So they put these hair corrals out where when the bears come in, their hair gets stuck in basically barbed wire. They take those hair samples, they do genetic analysis on it so that they can identify the exact bear that was in that area. And they put these all over different areas. And that way they know that they're not recounting the same bear, right? Because you go driving through the woods, like, oh, there's a bear. And then you come through the next day and you're like, oh, there's a bear. Did you just see 2 bears, or is it the same bear? So they have to do this genetic analysis to make sure that they're not recounting the same bears. So that's how they can use that data to really get a good understanding of what the population looks like. Now, they can only do that study once every 10 to 12 years because they need, first of all, money. It's expensive. Second, they need a full generation to pass before they do it, because otherwise you're just recounting bears you counted the last time. And so they want to count sort of the next generation to see, like, has the population increased or decreased with the next generation. So that's one of the ways that they get that data. And that's one of the things that the anti-hunters keep saying. They're like, oh, well, the last time they got data was 10 years ago, so it's outdated and we don't know what the population looks like right now, which is bullshit. It's really, it's people that don't understand how data and how science works. That's just one part of the story. The other part of the story are studies that they do in between where they're looking at mortality rates, they're looking at survival rates, they're looking at birth rates, and all of these things. And from those things, they can build models. So they'll take those every 10-year data sets and build models that show growth or decline in different areas based on these other studies that they're doing. So we actually have a really good idea of what that population looks like. But we know that since the last count, which was in 2015, and it was about 4,000 bears, we know that the population has increased significantly. The models have showed us that. In fact, some of the models indicate there might be twice as many bears by now. But to be as conservative as possible, we're building our quotas off of the old numbers. We know that there's more bears, but we're still going to use those old numbers because we want to be as conservative as possible. Because again, this hunt needs to be palatable for the people that are against it. They need to be able to look at what FWC is doing and say, okay, they're being really careful about this. They're going about this in a smart way. And so that's what they did there. And so that 187 bears, the way they come up, I don't know if you guys want to know all these details, but I'm just going to say it anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
You can cut it out if you want. The way they come up
Hit
with
it.
that 187 bears is basically they look at the population, they look at the population growth rate. So we know the growth rate, right? And then they make a few assumptions that we also know are never going to be met. The first being that every single bear that's going to be harvested is female. Okay. So that's assumption number one, because females are the only half of the population that actually affect growth or decline, right? You can have one male bear impregnate 20 females. So bears are not really a hot commodity in terms of population growth. The females really are. So all these numbers are based on females. So assumption one, every harvested bear is a female. Assumption number two, there's going to be 100% success rate. And then there's a third assumption, which I can't think of right now, but it'll come to me in a second. Then what they do is they look at known mortality rates. So we're talking about bears that get hit by cars, bears that maybe have to be shot because they're becoming a nuisance or, whatever. They find a dead bear somewhere, it gets reported. So all these bears they know have died. They then take those numbers and they try to figure out from the models, how many females can we remove from this population to make the growth rate 0? Not negative, but 0. So it stays exactly the same. And then with all of those assumptions in there, that growth rate's going to stay positive, right? Because we're not going to kill all females and, not everybody's going to be successful. So that's where that number comes from. They go, okay, I'm just making up a number here. Let's say that we can take 300 females out of the population and have there be no growth, right? So it stays exactly the same. But we also know that 113 bears got hit by cars this year, or they're expecting 113 to be hit this year because that's what was hit last year. There's 187 bears left. That's the quota. So again, they're assuming if 187 bears are actually killed and all 187 of them are female, then the population will stay the same. And then this is how conservative this is. There's so many layers to this. Then on top of that, they said, we're going to make the hunt season be in December, because in December, most of the cubs and females will already be denned up for hibernation. So there's really going to be a lot more males walking around during the season. And they're allowing feeding stations, which allows hunters to be more selective and really pay attention, see if it's a big male, boar bear, and harvest a boar. They're also allowing hounding, hunting with dogs, which again allows them to tree the bear, get a good look at it, decide, is this a male or a female, so that people can let females go. So we have methods in place that are going to reduce the number of females that are harvested, but the quota is based on all females being harvested. So we know, like, with relative certainty that even if everybody is successful, the population will continue to grow. And so when people come in and say the FWC did a bad job or they didn't think about this or the science isn't there, tell them they're fucking liars. Straight up, because you can't argue with the science here. It is so sound. And that's why these lawsuits are going to fall flat on their face when they come through.
Well, that makes great sense to me.
That's very conservative.
Yeah,
Very, very
yeah.
conservative.
Sounds like the FWC wants my $250 when I pull this tag.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, and that's the other side of it. We want this to be palatable for everybody, including people that are against it. So the more money that we can make with this that can be reallocated into bear research and conservation, the more people are going to be okay with it. You know, so yeah, there's an opportunity here for FWC to make a lot of money that can be used for bear conservation, and that's the point. That's how the North American model of conservation works. You know, and
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
they're sticking to it. They're doing exactly what their job is, you know, designed to do. So, like, you know, I hate to be like a fangirl here, but like FWC is kicking ass on this one.
No, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean, listen, I'm all for, you know, especially with the tag situation. Like, it's just everybody's gonna apply for a tag, especially if there's only. It's like Kentucky without tags, right? You know,
yeah.
There's X amount that we have, especially for out-of-state residents, and then residents get 90% of them. Everybody puts in for an elk tag. Guess what's going to happen with bears? The second it's available, I'm putting in for a bear tag.
No, 100%.
Yeah, I'm definitely applying. I mean, I put so much time into trying to get this thing across the finish line. Like, it'd be kind of crazy if I didn't. But I can tell you right now, the last time we did this hunt in 2015, there's 180,000 hunters in Florida, and 3,700 bought a tag for $100, and it was guaranteed that you were getting a tag. You know, like you just bought it, and it was $100, and you had a tag. So when you say the statement like, "Oh, everybody's going to put in for this," it's not true. A lot of people won't. Like, a lot of people will either feel like, "Oh, this is just a money grab. I'm not giving FWC shit." There's also people that are like, "I'm not lucky enough to win. I'm not going to put into it." You know, and then there's people that are going to throw a crap load of money into it. But I'm just going to say this, like, if you care about conservation, if you care about hunting, if you care about the animals that we hunt, put as much money into it as you know, feel comfortable doing. Like, you know, don't go broke doing it. But if you don't put money into this, then FWC doesn't have the funding that they need to manage, you know, the stuff that we love. So spend your money. It's a good place to spend your money.
I'll go out on a limb here and say you're preaching to the choir with this group. I know we actually just talked about the same thing, but with the elk population in Kentucky with the last guest that we had, and it's the same thing. You know, even though I'm a landowner there, I still have to have an out-of-state tag, and there's only, I think, 10% of tags allocated for out-of-state residents. I've been putting in for 10 years now. I encourage everybody to do it. I do it every single year. I get all my buddies to do it, because even if we don't get drawn, that money goes back into habitat restoration. It grows the herds. It pays for the science to be done. I mean, it's a great program, and the bear program is the same thing here. I mean, I'm all for it. Like, I'm definitely, and here's the thing too. I know you said that a lot of people aren't going to do that, and that's probably the case, but I know out of our group of people, which is fairly large hunters, every single person I talk to is just going to go, absolutely, I'm putting in, even if we don't get it, you know, but that's our mentality. So, you know, and I agree, not everybody thinks that way.
And it's hard to tell non-hunters that, you know, you're doing conservation through hunting, but that is exactly what it is. You know, it's the same thing whether we're talking about South Africa or this bear hunt. Without hunters, all the animals are way worse off. You know.
Yeah,
That's such a hard concept to talk to people about. I literally just did a news interview for Fox News earlier today, and I said, I was like, you know, the bears are going to be better off because of this hunt, and they were like, how is that possible? You're going to kill them. You know, and it's like, yeah, we're going to kill a few of them to help the majority of them, you know. People really struggle with that concept. And, you know, I think hunters get a bad name because, unfortunately, same with everything, there's always going to be a few bad apples that spoil the whole bunch, right? There's always those assholes on social media being disrespectful to animals, and, you know, they think it's cool to, like, you know, whatever, like, pop a beer can on on a duck's beak and shotgun it. Like it just makes hunters look bad when you do shit like that. I mean, if you want to do it, don't do it on camera.
Oh, 100%.
Tow a shark behind your boat.
Oh, that was remember that kid?
Like shit like that. It just makes us look bad. And unfortunately, the people that don't hunt, most of them think that's the way we all are. And so they're just like, oh, you just want to kill shit. Like you don't care about nature. You're just pretending because it's like a good story. And I try to tell those people, like, yes, there are people like that, but as long as they do things legally, like they're a tool. They're a tool for conservation. Don't worry about them. Just let them do whatever the hell they're going to do. As long as they do it legal, managers are using that tool to keep these populations in check and to raise money for conservation. As long as those people are paying and they're following the rules, just ignore them. That's my advice on that.
One of the things I've noticed lately, and you guys might not have noticed it as much as I have, but I feel like, especially in the past several years, there's a lot more self-policing of the hunting industry than I used to see growing up as a kid. I think there's more of us now that are coming out and, telling these people, oh, that's fucking bullshit. You can't be doing that. You're giving us a bad rap, or you shouldn't be doing this, or you shouldn't be doing that, and try to keep people in check a little bit more than, when I was younger, I never saw it. But now I'm starting to really, especially over the past few years, I think there's more, kind of self-policing in the industry than there used to be.
And I think social media has a part of that too, because, everybody's privy to what's going on everywhere, Kentucky or wherever it is. Now the whole world is shrunk down to your computer screen. So people that mess up, including some of the, I heard one guy call these TV hunters horn stars. I think it's hilarious. But, the one guy just got arrested for tagging a whitetail in another state and things like that. It gets out quicker, and, it's kind of forcing everybody to be toe to line a little bit, be a little bit more ethical and a little bit more moral, and it helps everybody in the long run.
And you hit the nail on the head there. You said ethical.
Ethical, yeah.
That's the big thing. There's a difference between legal and ethical. And I think that's up to each person's interpretation. But for us, I mean, I know it goes one way, and there's some shit like you talked about the shark thing, and then there's the chick in Arkansas with the ducks. You remember that?
Yeah, the chicks. Yeah, that, and like bring it back to Florida, like that one charter guy down south that like had a out of state charter guy, and he had like 15 like 20-ish inch mahis stacked up on the like in the cooler, or and stuff like that, and everybody in the comments was just like, are you kidding me? These are barely this is this is 3 fish fingers.
Yep.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Yep. And some of some people get emotional, just like with the bear hunt or anything else. Oh my goodness, there's no bears. Well, there are, but then again, there's people like, when you read those comments, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that guy's another charter boat captain, or that guy's, that guy, I know there's an outfitter. He's like, hey man, that's not helping anybody by posting this nonsense,
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate the duck in the shotgun, the tip of the shotgun, it's disrespectful. Don't do it. Yeah, that's, there's a lot of us that,
don't post it on fucking social media.
No, 100%. But it's like,
I mean, I think like, yeah, don't post it on social media, but at the same time, take a good look at yourself. Like if you're doing shit that you feel like you can't post on social media, maybe you shouldn't do it at all, and I've ended friendships over, shady shit like that. People that are not following the rules. Now, I'm not a snitch. I'm not going to like call anybody out, but people who poach, like I've known people who have done shady shit, and like, sorry, we ain't friends anymore. Like I'm just not going to put up with that shit. So
yeah. I mean, it only takes one person to ruin it for all of us too. And that's the thing.
I think like if you've been a hunter or a fisherman for a long time, you've known guys to just be like, like, oh, there's nothing, better than like a fried 20-inch snook, fillet. And you're like, dude, what?
That ship has sailed. Yeah.
Like, dude, come on. Like, or whatever and stuff.
Well, do we have anything left to bring to the bear? Is there anything else you want to talk about at bear? I mean, listen, I had this whole thing prepped because we were going to do this podcast prior to the FWC vote. And now, it's gone through. So I feel like, well, we know what happened now, so there's much less of it to talk about. I think it's a great thing.
How do I get one of these tags?
Right. Who I got to call to get that? You know somebody we can call?
I mean, you just gotta have to put a bunch of money into it. I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna take a pretty penny. I mean, obviously you can draw it with $5, but like your chances aren't gonna be great. I think people are gonna be throwing a good bit of money into it. So I'll be throwing some money in there for sure. So
I got $10 coming FWC's way.
Yeah, you're going to spend a lot more than $10. You're fucking lying. I know better. All right, well let's move on and keep this thing rolling. You, Mike, you want to talk about fish?
Yeah, I always like talking about fish. See that?
I think that was a yes.
Totally agrees. Cypress, come on. Yeah, I know. There's a cat. I know. It's crazy.
What a great dog name, Cypress.
That's
Good dog.
Pretty cool.
Name.
I just named mine Kimber. I thought that was cool. That was pretty cool. That was legit.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it wasn't done 1,000 times.
She was sleeping a second ago and she couldn't look out the window. And now, let me just close these blinds real quick, so she can't see the cat that's out there. Cypress,
Let her go get that feral cat. Kill a lot of indigenous birds, you know.
That's true. One of the most invasive species in the world. All right.
They kill something like 1 billion birds.
Billion birds.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
An
people don't
insane
realize
amount
this,
of.
but house cats that live outdoors, like that live outside, if you let your house cat outside, you are contributing to the most invasive species in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's going down a whole different rabbit hole. But
Here we go.
I've seen many a bow hunting magazine in Australia when they kill like feral, they hunt feral cats.
Dude, they have a school cat shoot. I saw it on TV. They had the kids go and shoot cats for a school project.
yeah, where I grew up in Europe, in the Netherlands, they have a feral cat season. You can go out and shoot cats. It's like, I don't know why anybody would, but you can.
You see how people are losing their shit over a bear season in Florida? Could
good
you
golly.
fucking imagine what would happen if we opened up a cat season?
I got 2 tabbies and a calico today.
You know what's insane to me though is that like people are somehow okay with that, but in Holland, like this is just like, so you kind of understand like where we could end up if we let the anti-hunting community, like if we let ballot box biology take over our management. Like in Holland, like hunting is a rich man's sport. Like you can only do it if you own private land or have access to like a large piece of public land. I forget how big it needs to be, but like it needs to be like a minimum size. And activists there like literally like are so aggressive that there's an area there where they have red stags, right? They're native there. And there were so many red stags in this area, they were like destroying the vegetation. So the the ranger, like wildlife management people there, like decided they had to remove some of those red stags, like 400 or something like that. Instead of like letting hunters go and do it, letting hunters pay to go and hunt, the rangers went out to shoot these deer. But because of like the activists, they weren't allowed to keep them. They weren't allowed to donate them because if people eat them, then they're like somehow like psychotic or something. So they went out and shot these deer and put them in piles and burned them. And then the rangers started getting death threats from these activists. And literally some of the rangers killed themselves, like because the threats.
That's awful.
That's
So like I'm just saying, like the hog situation over there is like nothing you've ever seen. The hogs are not afraid of anything. They're everywhere by the hundreds, and they're native there. Like,
and there's some monster ones too, right?
Oh yeah, dude, they're crazy. But like, I go out there and I can't hunt, but I take my camera and I go, sneak around and try and get close to them and take pictures of them. And these things aren't afraid of anything, and you're not allowed to hunt them. And it just scares the shit out of me that is essentially what the anti-hunting community in the U.S. is advocating for. That's the system that they want. And I've seen how fucked up that system is. And that's part.
Isn't that essentially what California did with the mountain lions? I mean, they took it away, and now there's all kinds of problems, and they're trying to hire people to snipe them instead of having hunters pay. And God knows that state needs some revenue like no other.
I mean, the California mountain lion situation is a really interesting one. Same with bears. So they have a ton of bears there, but you can't hunt bears. I don't know if you've heard this like statistic about kleptoparasitism between bears and mountain lions in California, but essentially there's just like really interesting paper that we did a full podcast about. If anybody's interested, to go listen to it. But essentially,
Link in the description.
what like panthers or sorry, not panthers, cougars will go and like kill mule deer, right? And then they only get to eat like a small piece of the mule deer because then the bears are not far behind. They come in and like beat up the mountain lions and take the deer. So then the bears eat the deer. So, but the bears are terrible hunters, compared to a mountain lion. So then the mountain lion just goes and kills another deer, only gets to eat a little bit, and the bears come and kleptoparasitize. They take it and eat it themselves. And so because of the bear population, the mountain lion population I forget what the exact number is, but they're killing like, I think it was like 7 times more deer than they otherwise would if the bears weren't there kleptoparasitizing their prey.
I saw that. I didn't see it on your podcast, but Ranella had a biologist on, and they were talking. So it was California, Oregon, and Washington State. So that's where I actually heard about this. I'm like, shit, this sounds familiar. But yeah, Ranella had somebody on, and they went through this shit, and like, it's crazy. Like the mountain lions cannot. They'll kill it, and then the bears just come in and just snatch it up, say "fuck you, this is mine now," and they got to go kill some more.
Yeah,
so the blacktail population, everything's being affected because the mountain lions are killing. I don't know what the number is, 2x, 3x, whatever the hell that they normally would, because they can't actually eat what they kill.
Yeah, they can't eat what they kill. So that guy that you're talking about that Ranella had on the podcast, he's part of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. He's the policy guy for the western side of the country. Really, really nice guy.
See, we were going to talk about it. Yeah, no, it was good. Like
Mark, I have a question. Like as a PhD, like how do you how do you just like tell like the non-hunting crowd to be like, this like hunting is so good, like it's so good, like how do you like convince them just like no you don't understand, like it's way better to shoot 15 California mountain lions than to lose our entire mule deer population.
Yeah, I mean, you have to come at it from like a really subtle approach, and you got to find common ground, and it's really hard to do. I mean, a lot of them are just like not really open to listening. They've got their talking points and they know what they want to say, and you can't convince them otherwise. I actually wrote an article for Bear Hunting Magazine pretty recently about this exact thing, like how to find that common ground. And this isn't necessarily for like anti-hunting people, but more so like the anti-hunting community makes up like, let's call it somewhere between 1% and 5% of the population, right? And then the hunting community makes up somewhere between 1% and 5% of the population. But then there's like 90% in the middle that's just on the fence. They're kind of like, they're leaning one way or the other. They're not really sure where they stand. They might be supportive of hunting, or they might be like a little bit, I don't know about hunting. Those are the people that we really need to focus on to try to sort of bring them to our side, get them to lean to our side of the fence. Those are the people that you can convince. The people that are like hard set and like, they're like, no, hunting's bad. Like there's almost no point in even engaging in a conversation with them. It's not really going to go anywhere. But I find that, the people that are sort of in the middle there, those people are usually really open to these conversations. And like, I'll give you an example. I was at the commission meeting yesterday, and I was sitting in the overflow room because there were so many people there. Like they had to have like overflow rooms. And there's this like old lady sitting next to me, and I was kind of like listening to her and her friend talking, just kind of eavesdropping. And she's talking about like her daughter that lives in Alaska, that's like a bear biologist and whatever. Well, I did my PhD in Alaska. So like I kind of chimed in and was like, oh, where in Alaska is your daughter? And start talking. And I told them like, oh, I did my PhD in Alaska. And they were like, oh, you have a PhD? That's great. Oh my God. And they just like assumed because I was educated and was a scientist and had a PhD that like I was on their side, because in their mind, that's the only thing that makes sense, And so they were like, oh, are you orange, or are you on our side? And like they meant orange, like everybody was wearing orange that was on the party. And I wasn't. I was just wearing like a button down shirt, and I was like, oh no, I'm totally for this hunt. And she was like, what? Oh my God, like why? And I had kind of started talking about some of the science, and she was like, well, I asked my daughter and she said these things. She had like 5 bullet points, and I said, "Well, are you okay with me addressing some of those things? Like, can I give like a rebuttal to those points?" And she was like, sure. And I started kind of talking about some of the science that like debunks her arguments. And then she was just like, well, honestly, it turns me off even more now that you're saying that it's all about the money. Like these animals are just some sort of cash cow, I was just like, look, I get it. That's kind of a fucked up way of thinking about an animal. But at the same time, like, this is just how the world works. Like, if everybody cares about money, if you want people to care about animals that don't already care about animals, an easy way to do that is to put a monetary value on that animal. It's like, I understand that that's like off-putting, and it's kind of off-putting to me too, but it's just the reality. But my point is, like, she was so hard set in her stance that like it really didn't matter what kind of logic I threw her way. She was going to find a way to be offended by it. So I just try to shy away from those conversations, and I really try to focus on those people that are in the middle.
I think it's our job as hunters, like I said, those 1 to 5% of us that are hunters, is don't turn non-hunters into anti-hunters. That's the hardest thing.
Right.
And the best way to do that is to try to, like you said, what you did, try to do a logical explanation of, well, we donate this much money, just by law. What's that? The Robinson?
No, the Pittman.
Yeah. So, when we buy ammo, when we buy any kind of equipment, it goes towards the environment and it helps blah, 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 blah. But like you said, you'd say that to an anti-hunter, they're just going to be Charlie Brown's teacher. They're not going to listen. But, maybe you can turn a non-hunter into someone and say, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. You guys do more than just go shoot guns.
And we've talked about that before. I think Sue asked me, have I ever had success converting an anti-hunter to a hunter? Absolutely not.
No.
Have I ever had success converting a non-hunter to a hunter? Absolutely, a ton. I can name off several dozen that it's worked for, but an anti-hunter, for whatever reason, their mind's already made up and you're not going to change it.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of turning an anti-hunter into a hunting supporter. My wife, like when we started dating, she was a vegetarian. She grew up in Pensacola. And so she was surrounded by, the dumb rednecks, and no offense to anybody up in Pensacola, but when she saw people in camo, 90% of the time they were, like just shitty people, and so she just thought that's how hunters were. They were all just like these dumb rednecks that like didn't give a shit about anything. And it's like, no, you're just seeing the really, like, the ones that stand out. The average hunter isn't like, standing out the way that those people do. And it was kind of like a point of contention when we first started dating. Like, it almost didn't last because of it. But then she started realizing, like, wow, like, this guy's actually really thoughtful, and like he has a lot of really good reasons for why he hunts. And then once she tried wild game, like, she went from vegetarian to, like, I was like, look, can you just try it? Like, it's like as ethically sourced as meat can be, try it. And she tried it and she was like, what the fuck? Like, she's like, I feel like she's like, this has been missing from my life. Like, she's obsessed with wild game now. And so, like, she really supports me hunting because she wants to eat the wild game. She doesn't want to hunt herself, And that's one of the things I always try to suggest to people as well, is like, when you talk about hunting to non-hunters, focus on the food aspect of it, because that's something that everybody can relate to. Everybody eats, and if you can, like, if you can go to a party and, bring like whatever, some duck pop or something really easy to eat, something really delicious, people can eat that and go, what is this? And you're like, oh, that's duck. I harvested those ducks. And they go, oh my God, you hunt? Like, immediately at the beginning of that conversation, you have that food connection where they're going like, shit, well, maybe this hunting thing isn't so bad because this food's fucking awesome,
Yeah,
Like,
that's a great avenue in.
Like, people like to see that hunters are using, like, the amount of freaking people that I talk to that are like, oh, like, I guess I'm okay with hunting if they're going to use it for food. And I'm like, who the fuck, like, what do you think, like, most hunters are doing? You think they're just shooting them and throwing them in a dumpster? Like, no, like, 99% of animals that are harvested are eaten, like, that's what we do it for. And then there's a lot of hunters that maybe, like, don't prefer wild game over other meats, but they still will eat it because they owe it to the animal to respect it, you know? And a lot of people don't realize that that's like, they think that the majority of hunters are just like trophy hunters that just want to go out and shoot lions and stuff like that, you know? And that's not the average hunter, you know?
Shoot a whitetail, lop its head off, take a picture with it, and you're done. That's what I
Seriously.
get a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, why do you want to put it on the wall? Like, it's like some sort of trophy. I'm like, bitch, you know how fucking hard I worked to get that thing? If you knew how much money and time I put into it to kill that deer,
How many times I got blown at?
I killed that buck on opening day, but you think I just walked out into the woods and was like, oh, la-di-da, oh, there's a deer, you know? No, I went and scouted for 6 weeks. I was out there every single weekend looking for areas where deer were hanging out. People don't see that part of it, you know? So I think it's important to highlight that, like the work that goes into it and the food that comes out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got 2 points here. One, I'm gonna say 90% of what we eat, at least in my household, is game meat. Whether it's fish that we've caught or game. For the first time ever, I'm actually having to buy it because I had the 2 freezers that went out, and unfortunately for you, that also happened here. So here in Kentucky, so now I'm having to buy some until deer season again. So that's point number 1. So 90% of what my household eats is wild game, whether it's whitetail, axis deer, mule deer, elk, whatever we hunt and whatever we fish for, that's what we eat. And again, I'll buy some ribeyes occasionally or some sausage, but most of it comes from wild game, and we've always got freezers full. So for me, it's more about, I'm not going to say that I'm not a buck hunter and I don't look for, those booners. I do. But primarily when we go in, we got to fill the freezer first, and then that's what we look for.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's a big thing that people don't, and they also don't understand the amount of time and fucking money that we spend pursuing these fucking animals. And listen, and we talked about in the last podcast, but if you, and I'll use the Kentucky farm, for example, if you put a price per pound on that fucking backstrap that I'm going to harvest this year versus what I've spent in not only feeding, but food, we've got the food plot programs going on. We've got habitat restoration going on. We're working with forestry. We're doing all this other shit. That's the most expensive fucking meat you'll ever eat in your life right there.
Absolutely.
By the time it's said and done.
I got a piece of.
I agree with you. And that's part of the reason that I hunt public land, because it is cheaper. Like I personally, like, it's not for me to like go do food plots and like hunt over corn. Like maintaining those feeders, man, that shit's a pain in the ass. Like I just have no interest in it. I really love the public land game, but I will counter your argument, because I hear you. I hear like that meat's so insanely expensive when you add all that up. But this is my take on it. I have to have a hobby. I have to have a hobby where I go outside. So whether it's having a boat and going fishing or going hunting, scuba diving, like, I know myself, I'm going to find a hobby to be obsessed with. So why not have it be a hobby that gives something back, right? So when you think about it like that, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have a hobby I'm going to be obsessed with, and I'm going to spend money on the gear. So let's negate the cost of the gear, because I enjoy that part, right? I get enjoyment out of buying the gear and getting a new bow and like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Then I could just focus on like, all right, how much gas did I spend to get here, and all those things. And when you think about it like that, the meat's actually not that expensive.
Yeah, and I think for me, I look at it like I get enjoyment, so when you take a piece of ground, a vacant piece of ground, and you get there and, we're doing surveys and we're putting out mineral, originally when I bought the farm, and, I'm seeing, 20 doe, 30 doe kind of thing like that, a couple bucks here. And then 5 years later, all of a sudden I've got a huge deer population. We're past, and that's the other thing people don't see. They think the first thing with horns that comes in, we shoot. We don't do that. We don't, we've got a strict 5-year-old, or unless he's some kind of cull there, 140 plus inch, requirement at our farm. We're advancing the age group every year, and we're really hunting, looking for those specific animals, the mature animals. If it's not 5 or 6, we don't want to shoot it there. Now, we have to cull several doe because for whatever reason, we just can't keep up with them there. So we've got to take lots of does. And I think like 20 permits a year. We never shoot 20 doe, but I get like 20 permits. But for us, like, I pass 10 times more deer than I actually shoot in the course of a year. And people don't understand that.
And, there's a progression as a hunter too. When you're younger, maybe when, hopefully you started hunting when you were a teenager and you just want to pull the trigger, and then you want a big trophy. And then it gets to the point where it's like, I get satisfaction out of having a deer come in, not know I'm there. And if it's not something I want to hunt, if that deer walks on and doesn't know I was there, that's very much a success a lot of times to me. And I really enjoy that. I fooled that animal in his own realm and his own deal, and that's a big deal to me. I love that now. I guess I'm just getting old.
Yeah, and I'll give public land hunters props because that's fucking hard, dude. That is fucking hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I bitch a little bit about the cost, but comparatively speaking, like I would be so in the dumps after like day 4 of not seeing a single deer. Like, and there's several people that we know that hunt public land in Florida. And like, oh yeah, we'll go for a week or two and not see any deer. I'm like, fuck, I can't imagine a single sit without seeing deer. That's how fucking spoiled I am. But there's a cost associated with that too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't want to brag or anything, but I see.
I know. I've seen your shit. I know you've got them figured out.
I see
You're
deer
different.
most sits in public land, but it's taken a long time to get that dialed in. And I do agree with you, like on passing things up. Like that's something that I've started doing recently, right? Because I've only been hunting for like 10 years or something like that. Not even, I think maybe it's been like 8. So I was very much still in that phase where like, I just wanted to shoot stuff. Right. And now I've gotten efficient enough that I can fill the freezer. And then once I filled the freezer, I'm like, all right, now I can wait for a nice buck. And in the past couple of years, I've started letting smaller bucks walk, and that's on public land too. A lot of people are like, oh, it's legal, you got to shoot it. But I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, if you can still apply like your own limitations on public land and watch those deer grow. And there's something that just makes me warm and fuzzy on the inside about like letting a legal deer walk, and I think that's just a progression that comes like you said, with age or with experience. You get to a point where you're like, no, I'm good. I don't need to shoot this deer. I can just let him walk by me and wait for something nice. And then like 2 days later, when the quota's almost over, you're like, fuck, I should have shot that deer.
I think every one of us has been in that. I can tell you what, you pass that deer in early October during pre-rut, right? So we're, Ohio, Kentucky, Georgia, something like that. And like, that's not really my speed, or, I can maybe make him 4, but I don't think any more than that. He's got to have another year. I can tell you what, come December, all of a sudden he's at least 6. Oh, yeah. That deer's ready to go. We got to take that deer.
Should have thought twice for walking towards me again.
Exactly.
I got to ask about these bucks behind you guys. Like, those come off of your property. Like, where? Like, what's this?
These are both Corbett bucks.
Yeah. 200 yards from where you are right now.
Yeah. So the funny thing, so these bucks here, these bucks are both still alive. So these are replicas that are on the wall. So we've got a friend of ours that's here in Okeechobee that's a deer farmer. And so every year, they cut the horns, obviously, on farm deer to keep them, from damaging each other. And these are 2 of his really high-end bucks that he's had for years and years and years. And in between show season, he lets me, keep them for the podcast studio to kind of show them off. But yeah, these are actually right here in Okeechobee. They are not free-range bucks before anybody gets in the comments and starts chewing my ass.
I think that's pretty obvious, dude. I mean, because those things are freaks, like
they're a little ridiculous, no?
I literally don't know what I would do if I saw a deer walk out. Like,
this one was off of Pratt Whitney, and that one was off of Northland.
Yeah.
Man, honestly, if I saw a buck like that, like, I feel like there'd be a part of me that would like want to let it walk just because it's like such a majestic creature, And then I would get over that in like 5 seconds and shoot it, but like,
Yeah. Well, listen, the next time you're out in Okeechobee or getting out this way, give us a call. You got to go out there and kind of see. I don't know if you've been to a deer farm before, but these things are just incredible.
Oh yeah.
Like to look at them and see the farming and the care that goes, like they love these deer more than anything in their life. And to see like young John out there, working with these deer, and oh my God, it's such a cool experience. And like, I've never seen somebody, as hunters, we love deer. You don't love deer as much as a deer farmer does. I can tell you that.
Are they harvesting like urine and stuff? Like what's
Mm-hmm.
Is it the
He's not doing urine. He's doing I think he sells semen straws.
Yep.
And then and that's the thing too. I think that there's more money in the doe than there is in the buck, obviously. And that's the weird thing that it took some he had to kind of prove to me that. But after all these years, like, yeah, so the does are worth more than the bucks are. But yeah, so they sell straws. Obviously can't cross lines with deer. He will sell, some of the bucks that are good and they got potential, but they're not really where he's want. He'll sell them for stalker bucks for some of the the other big high fence ranches and stuff like that. But it's really cool. Like, they know every deer by name. They've got a history with it. They name it and like, oh, that's Blue 21 and it was born on this date and that date, and they've seen it. And like, these deer live the best life in the world. Like, they are pampered and preened. Like, it's a really cool thing to see them taken care of. Like, you've been out there several times now.
Oh, it's fun when he's like, "You want to go see a 300-inch whitetail?" You're like, "Absolutely." And he'll be like, "Oh, he'll be 400, but next year." You're like,
and that's
what?
just through protein feeding, right? That's
no, it's all genetics now. So
No
it's line breeding and cross breeding, mostly line breeding now to get those deer where they are. But that's an entire different podcast on itself to explain that. But man, shit, we haven't even got to fishing.
I thought this was a fishing podcast.
Yeah, right. I don't know anything about hunting.
Mark just started up. Mark's going fishing on another YouTube channel. We got to talk about. Well, let's talk about snappers since we just dove into bears head first and then got off on a tangent about whitetail and non-hunters and anti-hunters. So let's pivot now. Let's go to red snapper, which I know here's where Mike fucking loses his shit. One of the most frustrating topics for anglers now. So, for whatever reason, I see it as like red snapper became like a poster child for me for like federal overreach for recreational fishing. So you want to start this off, Mike?
Well, I hope that Mark would agree with me that it's a bunch of bad science. In the good news, we had double the quota we had last year. This year.
Oh, that's nice.
2 days instead of one.
On the Atlantic side.
Yeah. On the Atlantic side.
Not Gulf waters.
Yeah. But
well, Mark, I mean, that's your specialty, right? Yeah, there you go. Tell us about snapper. You're not gonna, you and Mike are gonna go at it. I can tell. I love it.
Oh, I can take you out and bury you in red snappers.
Hit us with it, Mark.
And I'm sure you can. And so that's like one of the really difficult issues that the scientists are dealing with this, and it's not just snappers. Like, we can go down the same road with Goliath groupers, right? We can talk the same thing with permit down in the Keys. One thing that all these fish have in common is that they are aggregation spawners. And so what happens is when you live in an area where they aggregate to spawn, it can seem like you could walk across their backs, right? Like, there's so many of them. And so when people live in those areas, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, there's so many fish. Like, how is it possible that we can only harvest like one or two of these or whatever? But when they're not spawning, they spread back out. And so these fisheries are managed across like these huge areas that span much further than just our South Florida waters, right? They go all the way up the coast. And once they're spread out like that, there's a lot less of them, or at least seemingly less of them. But during certain times of the year, they're all here. And so we've learned from experience, and I'll just give a sort of classic historic example of overfishing a spawning aggregation is the Atlantic cod. We basically, and when I say we, I mean humans, over in Europe, the Atlantic cod population was fished like into a collapse. Like, it completely collapsed. And, it took decades to try to get that to come back. And so that's kind of like a classic example that's often referred to in fisheries management, especially with these spawning aggregation species. We know that if you it's just so easy to overfish a spawning aggregation, and because the entire population is in one spot, right? So it might seem like there's a ton of fish, but if you shave off 20% of that population, that can, when they spread back out, that can have far-reaching impacts beyond just that area. And so that's part of the reason that they're so careful with with these spawning species. That said, red snapper also has the issue of being, a deep water fish. And they're very susceptible to barotrauma. And so this is like the shittiest part about the red snapper fishery. Most of the quota, and when I say quota, we'll go right back to this concept of how the bear quota is determined. When you know this, when you know sort of the number of the population, you know what the population growth rates are, and you know the known mortality rates. You subtract those known mortality rates from sort of the target harvest, and then whatever's left is what recreational fishermen and commercial fishermen can get. Most of our quota is taken up by out of season catches because they die from barotrauma. So you're bringing those fish up from the bottom, and most of them won't even survive, even if you use your descending device. And we did a podcast on this. I don't know if you guys checked it out.
I watched it. You guys dove deep into the venting.
So if that's the case, then why does the Gulf of Mexico, why does the Gulf of Florida, Gulf of America, sorry.
Gulf of America.
Why does the Gulf have every weekend from Labor Day till the end of the year, 2 fish per person per day? Is their population that much healthier than the Southeast Atlantic?
No. It's because it's shallower, and barotrauma is less of an issue on that coast because the fish are caught, more of the fish are caught in shallower water. So their chances of surviving the barotrauma is that much higher. And so if you listen to the podcast that we did on this, it was a really interesting study where they looked at fisheries dependent and fisheries independent data sets, and they modeled different regulations to see which regulations would help the population remain sustainable, which regulations would help it grow, which would cause a decline. And one of the things that had the greatest impact, there was 2 regulations that they tested in this model that had the greatest impact. One of them was that you have the rule being that you catch whatever fish you catch, no matter what size, there's no size limit. Whatever fish you catch, that's your fish, right? So you throw that in the cooler, and then you have a limited number of I forget how many fish are you allowed to keep nowadays? Is it 2?
1 in the Atlantic.
Is one? It's one
It's
per person?
two in the Gulf, 1 in the Atlantic, and the Gulf does have a size limit, 20 inches.
Yeah. So basically, the regulation that had the greatest impact is if there was no size limit, and whatever fish you caught first, that was your fish that went into the cooler. So basically what would happen if that was the case, and obviously people aren't gonna be super thrilled about that because they want to catch a nice big one. They don't want to catch some little dink and be like, all right, well, this little 12-inch piece of shit is my fish. What happens though if you do that is that the effort, right, the amount of fishing that's being done decreases drastically because you're done. You go out, you catch 1 fish and you're done. So you're not bringing up more and more fish that you're not keeping that also are dying, right? So I forget the exact numbers, but a very high percentage of the fish that you bring up from the bottom are going to die unless you use a descending device. And even when you're using the descending device, a lot of them still die, but it increases their survival drastically. So when they combine those 2, where every single fish is put back with a descending device in the off season, and during the season, the first fish caught is your fish and you're done fishing, that's what caused that population to really increase. But is that a realistic regulation? Is that something that fishermen are going to be happy with? Probably not, but that's kind of one of the things we talked about. It's what can we do? Well, the first thing we can do is use those descender devices. It is so important that you use them because I can't remember the exact numbers here, but I want to say their survival goes up by 50% when you use the descending devices. And what happens is if we're able to get everybody to use them, because a lot of people just have them on the boat, they won't even freaking use them. If we can get everybody to use them, and that mortality caused by barotrauma goes down, we put that back into the model, and now that quota is that's available for recreational harvest is going to increase. and then we might be able to increase that number to where you can keep, I don't know, 2-3 fish. Um,
I think everybody would be happy with 2 fish and have a real season.
yeah,
Not just a day or 2 days or even 5 days. It's hard to go drive 3 hours and you can do it for 7 months.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I can tell you from experience, most of the guys in the Gulf, they're catching them in 80, 90, 100, 150, 180 feet of water, which is the same thing we're doing here.
Yeah,
And
a
as
lot
far
of
as the
them.
codfish goes, I mean, I get the Eastern Atlantic cod population is decimated, 5,000 years of overfishing. But as a guy that spent a lot of time in New England, commercial tuna fishing and, bottom fishing, trying to catch bait, there's a shit pile of codfish on Stellwagen Bank, George's
Now there
Bank,
is.
Jeffries. Yep.
There's a lot
Yep.
of cod now. Like, they've made a huge comeback. But if you went out there in the 80s,
I
there
was there.
yeah, well, maybe on this coast, but we're talking about the European coast. I don't.
No. Yeah, they wiped that out. They would.
Like-
So well, she's my ex-wife, but
Mhm.
anyway, she's from the islands between Finland and Sweden, right? Tell you this story. And we'd take the ferry to go across from Sweden to the islands. And there's a deli there with pictures of codfish that are absolutely unbelievably enormous.
Monsters.
There's the smallest one is like 35 kg. It's ridiculous how big
Yep.
these are. And you can't catch codfish there anymore. They're gone. They're done.
Yeah.
That's in the Baltic, But now in Norway, now like I said, they're coming back. I mean, there's outfits now where you can go catch halibut and codfish there, and it's booming. Bluefin tunas are back. I mean, everything is.
I forget what they call them. I think they call them scree cod. So scree is like, they almost treat it like it's like a different species. So I went and fished in Norway. I went to a conference during my PhD up in Tromsø, which is like up in the Arctic. And I really wanted to get offshore and go catch some scree cod, but like I couldn't afford it. I was a poor student. But they treat it like it's like a different species. But basically what it is these giant female breeders, But I was just fishing from shore out there. And I mean, I shit you not, every single cast I caught a cod. I think, and it was summertime, so it was midnight sun. So I'll go to the conference during the day. I wasn't sleeping. I was in my 20s, I was able to do that shit. And I would just fish all night long, get 2 hours of sleep, and go to the conference. And I think over the course of like 5 days, I must have caught over 300 cod. It was absolutely insane. And it's hard to even imagine that like that fishery once upon a time was depleted to the point where there was like none.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But my point, with in the snappers and codfish and all kinds of, it comes in as somebody who I commercial fish for a living for quite a while. You get kind of jaded when you keep hearing, oh, there's no fish. Like you mentioned earlier about, there's a lot of red snappers because of spawning aggregations. Buddy, I can fill a boat every month of the year. Not every place, but basically from Fort Pierce north, like a lot of my friends that are king fishermen, they're all bitching and moaning. They can't catch it. They're catching red snappers, big red snappers, bugging, trolling.
Yeah.
Guys that had charter operations in Daytona and in New Smyrna, like they can't catch mangrove snappers anymore. They can't catch gag groupers, can't catch scamps. Everything is red snappers, and it's not just a spawning aggregation. I'm all for it, and you know what? I think every fisherman would be all for it. Shut it down when they're spawning. Close it down. I grew up in Long Island. Don't hold it against me. When I was a kid, and we had these weak fish, like the gray trout, the northern trout, and they would in the bay they would go set gill nets when they were spawning and wipe them out. I mean, it got to a point, like I said, there were none. Well, they stopped it. Well, guess what? We have them again now. So I mean, I told this last podcast, but I was on a charter one day on my charter boat, and then Pat Price, may he rest in peace, was there. We were chatting away, and there's this big commercial boat, looked like a crab boat from the Bering Sea, and we got him on the radio, and he was setting fish pots for survey. Well, he was 2 miles from the nearest piece of rock setting fish pots to try to do sampling for snapper and grouper, and we laughed. We're like, dude, you're not going to catch anything. And he was doing a 45-minute soak, And when you hear stuff like that, you're just like, what's the purpose of that? I know the answer. The answer is there's no fish there. And then, then you're going to hear gloom and doom about how, there's no fish. And I tried to tell him, I was like, hey man, if you come over here where we are, you set that thing for 45 minutes, you're going to have there's going to be some biomass in there, But he said, I have to drop pots where I'm told. So
Right.
that's where, you hear the term bad science. And, when I experience that, firsthand, it's like, well, you get a little jaded and like, you can make any excuse you want, but yet on the Gulf Coast, there's a thriving commercial fishery with these guys with these bandit rigs. I'm sure you've seen the videos everybody's seen of, a Christmas tree of red snappers, 60, 80 fish on a rig every hook. And the recreational guys get a decent whack at them for the year, but it seems like their population is holding at least, and then on the Atlantic side, we get a fish or two fish for the year, even the commercial guys, our season is truncated, and my take as being a guy that straddles the fence of commercial and recreational is we all need to get together and make sure that the science that we're getting is the good science. Cause I know some of the Gulf states got together and did their own surveying, and that's why that quota is different from what we have, and I know Governor DeSantis said he was going to try to take control of the red snapper quota. I don't know how you can do that in federal waters, but he said that, he was going to try to do something to make it more fair for the fishermen. Again, there's the danger of that, ballot box biology that you don't want to, I don't want to be selfish and be like, hey man, I want to kill these things. But I think some of the science and some of the reasoning is flawed, as a guy that spends a copious amount of time on the water. I just think it could be done better. And I mean, I don't want to be the guy that's, that says, I want to get mine. I want my kids and my grandkids, God willing, one day to be able to get them. But at the same time, I think one or two fish a year is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. And there's two things you said there I wanted to address. So, the first being, like you said, everybody would agree that close it during spawning season, right? Like it's a no brainer.
And no matter what the species, I'm all for it,
Right. The problem is with this particular species, it's not the fish that you're catching during the season. That's not the problem. It's the fish.
Right, it's the ones you turn loose.
It's the fish that get
I get that.
outside of season. Then most of them are also dying. Like that's the problem. That's the problem that they're dealing with here. And how do you prevent that from happening? Because if we can figure out how to get everybody to be on board with using descending devices, we can reduce that mortality drastically. And if we can do that, then we can really see an improvement in this situation.
Well, that's no small task. I mean, there's a bazillion people out there, and red snappers there are no mutton snappers. They're pretty dumb. You can catch them on a chicken rig. So you got to educate everybody,
Yeah.
Well, and then the venting tool, descender, whatever the hell you call it, that's not an easy thing to master either. You just don't just go jab the fucking fish with the pointy end.
Well, there's the venter, and then the descender is something different. You actually hook that on their lip and you drop it on a rod, and it bring the fish back down to pressure. And then when you lift the rod, it releases the fish. So it puts him back to how many.
That's what you were talking about on your podcast.
There's also ones that like you set a pressure. So like, you could set it to like a certain depth. So if you're in like 80 feet or whatever, you can set it to, whatever. You can basically set a gauge to like that depth. And then when it gets down to like, 70 feet or something, it'll automatically release. So, that's the best way to do it. The venting tool, that's kind of like an old school thing. The mortality rate still stays relatively high when you vent them. But using a descender is really the way to go. But, it's hard to convince people to use them because it takes time, especially the commercial guys. Like if they have to, descend every fish that they catch, like it's just not realistic. And so it's just like a really complicated issue. And then another thing that you said, about the guy putting I forget what
pots out,
putting the trap, you're doing a survey. Yeah.
Putting the pots out. So you're like, yeah, why would you put a pot here? There's no fish here. If you go, a few hundred yards that way, you're going to be like right next to a wreck, and you drop it down there, you're going to have a shitload of red snapper in it. The thing is, as a scientist, you can't just put the pots in the places where the fish are, because then that would artificially inflate the numbers, right? So they have to, like, typically there's going to be, a randomized sample location. So there's going to be like grids, or, there's a few different ways to go about this, but a lot of times there's sort of a randomization. And so they're putting those pots in places where, like, they know just as well as that they're not going to catch anything, but those zero data are still important for them to get a good estimate of what's
No, I
in.
understand that, but I also know that in the Gulf that the states took over the surveying and the numbers went up exponentially from what the federal government said there were. And that is the reason that quota is higher than the Atlantic. So
Yeah, so there's also been an increased effort to use sonar, and so my lab that I was in doing my PhD, that's actually one of the specialties. So if you want to talk red snapper, like I could suggest somebody who's spent a lot of time studying red snapper in the Gulf and the Atlantic. And he's an expert in using sonar equipment to identify like aggregations of red snapper and to be able to actually count biomass based on they do some really really cool stuff. And basically, if you use two different sonar frequencies, they like the signal that comes back from the fish that it's it's pinging off of will be different, and the like signature of those two different pings can actually help them identify what species it is that's down there.
yeah,
Uh,
it's called a Wasp sonar. I've got actually a buddy that lives here in town that actually that has that equipment. It's pretty incredible. I mean, once you calibrate it, you know what species you're looking at, and it's off to the side and angles. And I mean, he uses it for
well,
mapping and charting and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it'll tell you what you're looking at and how many there
well,
are, and so on and so forth.
that's more on like the recreational side, but the ones that they're using are like super high power, like it's putting out
No,
raw.
this is a commercial fisherman, not a recreational fisherman.
Well,
I'm not
I
talking
mean,
about a Garmin.
but I mean the equipment. Like I mean, we're talking the stuff that the guy I'm talking about uses. They're like $1 million, like for one of these items. But anyway, he would be a great guy to have on the podcast if you want to talk about red snapper. But
Oh, that'd be great. I would love that.
Yeah,
Will he
for
give
sure.
us his numbers?
There we go.
I'm just scientific.
He asked.
purposes.
He asked if he'd give us his numbers.
But you talk about other fish like management. Like let's talk about mutton snappers, right? Mutton
Yeah.
snappers used to be 10 per person is 16-inch fork length, right?
Yep.
They changed it to 5 and 18. I think that was a massive home run. I think the mutton snapper fishing has gotten generally better. I've seen bigger fish. I mean 18, 19, 20-pound fish with more regularity, which I think is fantastic. There was talk about increasing yellowtail snapper from 12 inches to 13. And somebody told me, a friend of mine had a charter boat in Islamorada. I said that the biologist told them if we increase to 13 inches, they'll spawn twice more. And everybody said, let's do it, get on board. But it's never been done. I mean, that I don't know that that's actually true or not, but make it 14, make it 15. I mean, a 12-inch yellowtail isn't much,
Yeah.
But I'm all about doing stuff to increase the populations of the fish, But I don't know. I just get a little chafed with the red snapper. I know there's a lot of factors in it, like you said with the bear. Same thing. There's a lot of factors in it being very conservative, but I think they're being over conservative.
Yeah, I mean,
shit ton of them.
I definitely agree with that to some degree, and I also think that the unfairness between the commercial and the recreational sectors, like that part kind of rubs me the wrong way.
That's the one that chaps my ass right
Yeah.
there.
Well,
That's the one that gets me.
Well, the fact that the Gulf commercial quota is owned by just a handful of people, and basically you got to be an indentured servant to be able to commercial snapper and grouper fish in the Gulf is kind of unbelievable in my eyes.
Snapper barons.
Yeah, snapper barons.
Snapper
Well, they're
barons.
trying to do that. There's been a couple of efforts to do that in the Southeast Atlantic as well with snappers and groupers and triggers and stuff like that. And it's, gosh, I think that's terrible. It's a public resource and they're privatizing it. And that's a mess,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we can keep going down this rabbit hole a bunch.
Yeah.
No.
So I have a quick question for you as a marine biologist. So when I had a charter business for a while, I sold the boat out and took a desk job again, but we caught a ton of Goliath groupers, right? And we did it. We actually, we started doing it as like a shtick thing. It was like my thing, So we're catching them in very shallow water, 30 feet, 35 feet. Every single one got barotrauma in 30 feet of water. It's incredible. And not to the extent like their eyes were popping and everything. And usually you could just take a little a little pick gaff and lift their tail up, and then they would get down a little bit and they would go, But is that just because no other fish that you catch in that same area has that same issue, with if you catch another snapper or anything, they're fine, But what's the deal with the Goliaths with the Barotrauma in very shallow water? Is it just, and they're coming up very slow because they're fighting like heck.
It's well, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I don't want to get too complicated with this, but so the way that that the air bladder works in a fish, there's two different versions. There's a physostomus and a physoclistus air bladder. Physostomus are the kind of fish that can burp, right? So they can burp the air out. So those fish are never going to be an issue in terms of barotrauma, but they're also not really found in deeper water. So we're talking like tarpon and things like that. If you ever seen a tarpon go down and you'll see air bubbles like come back out, that's them burping. They're just like letting the air out of there. And the physostomus is really like a sort of a more prehistoric version. Physoclistus, they actually are able to take air out of the water, right, through their gills, and basically through some mechanisms we don't have to get into the details of, they can transfer air in and out of their air bladder to help them with buoyancy. That process is relatively slow. So and I'm kind of speculating here a little bit. I don't know the exact answer, but one thing that I think could be a factor with the Goliath groupers is they're very large. Their air bladder is very large, so it probably takes a long time for them to move the appropriate amount of air in and out of their air bladders. So because of that, it might just take a lot longer for them to be able to go up to the surface. Another thing, another theory there, is that while a fish is fighting, they're focused on fighting and they're not really trying to to equalize. They're not trying to move that air in and out of their bladders. Another species that has that same issue in really shallow water will get all bloated out is a lionfish. If you so I had a friend of mine that was studying lionfish, and he would go onto the reefs in 20 feet of water and catch them alive, but he needed them alive for an experiment he was doing in the lab. And he had to he would try and bring them up slowly, and they would come up and be all bloated and they would die. So what he ended up having to do is he had to create a cage that he set on the bottom, and he would catch them and put them into the cage, and then he would go up to the boat, and then they would bring them up super slow so that they wouldn't blow up.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
So there's just certain species that are just more susceptible to barotrauma than others. But realistically, with the Goliath groupers in 30 feet of water, they typically they're bloating up, but they're not really experiencing embolisms. Typically if you were to let them float, like you said, eventually they'll kind of regain their strength and they'll fight their way back down. But if you bring a Goliath grouper up from 60 feet, it's going to need some help to get back down. And can you imagine the size of the venting tool you're going to need?
No. So we did a thing. We did a thing with Johnny Morris. He opened up that aquarium in Springfield, Missouri, and but I guess because he's Johnny Morris, he got a permit to keep 4 Goliath groupers. So a friend of mine knew that I was doing that a lot, and he was working for Johnny. So they made a Bill Dance fishing show out of it. So they were in their boat, and we had the bonitas in our boat, and then we would put them on the circle hook and blah blah blah. So we caught 4 in 2 days, and it was kind of a neat deal because we caught one. We had a stretcher. We'd put it in the tank, bring it back in, and it was in the middle of summer when they were discharging the lake. So we had to shut the water off and then aerate it with bottled tanks. But we had a marine biologist who happened to be the same guy who brought the whale sharks to the Atlanta aquarium. That was a pretty cool story. But so he just took a hypodermic needle. Once we got them in the tank, they were floating upside down, and this little tiny hypodermic needle, and just the thing would bubble for 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden the fish would turn right backside and be happy as a clam. And then you may be familiar with this company in Marathon, Dynasty Fish Transport. They met us at the dock, and they had pressurized tanks and medicated water and so on and so forth. So once we caught our 2 that day, they would run them. They ran them that night to Marathon to quarantine, and the next morning came back. But as far as I know, I'm pretty sure all 4 of them are still alive in Missouri, but they lived in Marathon for a month to guess get the funk out of them, so they didn't kill everything else in the tank. But they did really well, even though they were floating. I guess they're such a big hardy fish. I guess
They're a very, very hardy fish, and I actually I know some people have done some Goliath grouper research, and so I've done a lot of acoustic tagging for fish, where you basically cut open their body cavity and you stick a tag inside of the body cavity, and then those acoustic tags can ping off of receivers and kind of tell you where the fish is hanging out. And I had a friend of mine that was doing that, and while he was in there, he was taking some biopsies for different samples. And one of the biopsies he would take is a liver sample. And the Goliath groupers are so big, with most fish, you can't sample a liver while an animal.
No, you're gonna kill them. Yeah,
you can't cut a piece off of a liver. But with the Goliath groupers, they would literally just shove the tag in there, and it'd be the liver's this massive thing. It would literally just take some scissors and just snip a little piece right off the tip. And they're fine, they're just incredibly hardy animals.
Yeah, they're pretty tough.
But if you ever shot a deer in the liver, it's a pretty vital organ.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's a death sentence for sure. You do that with a deer, but I remember that when you guys were doing that. I remember the pictures of your son.
Oh yeah,
he was just this little guy back then.
Yep.
And that was cool to see that.
Funny thing. So of course we catch the first one, and Johnny comes over and he jumps in the tank with it. And everybody's taking pictures. So we did the same thing. So we get the fish loaded in the tank, and we're going back out for the next fish, and the guy that was running the little boat, his wife was with me on the boat, and I've known her forever. In fact, named my daughter after her. She's a phenomenal fisherman, great mate, real deal. I mean, better than most guys. Really good bill fisherman. So anyway, so we're running, and I look over, and hanging off the rod is a pair of pants. And I said, what the hell's going on over there? And she goes, oh, that's Johnny. Because they used to fish on, in Panama and Costa Rica, and Johnny used to come fish with them all the time. And, he'd get all wet, and he'd take his pants off. And I'm like, Johnny's over there with no pants on? She's like, oh, yeah. He's free balling. Johnny Morris's stock went way up in my book that day. Anyway.
That's great.
Oh, well, while we're talking about, offshore and saltwater, you want to, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up shark depredation. I mean,
well, let's talk about this new act apparently that's been, I don't know if it's been signed into law, but it's been brought up for vote. The Shark Act. Mark, have you know anything about that?
I think I read something about it, but I really don't know much about it. Tell me about it.
I think it's the best I can understand. I read it a couple of times, and just trying to understand it. It's very brief. It's just basically saying that they're going to allot some money to study shark depredation. In South Florida here, when you want to talk about South Florida, you can talk about the shark dive operations out of Jupiter and Palm Beach. You can talk about, the sandbar shark, which is protected and has been for a long time. And there's days where we can't catch a fish. The shark depredation is so bad, and it's in shallow water, it's in deep water, and if it's in shallow water, it's bull sharks, and now, well, off of Jupiter, it's bull sharks and tigers and lemons and Caribbean reef sharks, and these are all fish that we would very occasionally see over the last 25 years, but now it's they got tiger sharks with names, and so on and so forth. The guys out of Palm Beach catching sailfish. All my buddies that charter fish there at a sailfish marina tell me that some of them say some days 7 out of 10 sailfish get eaten after they get released. So there's no big crescendo on the surface, but they're sitting up in the bridge of the tower watching this tired, browned out sailfish swim away and get pummeled by a half a dozen bull sharks 20 feet down. There's no doubt that there are places in the world where sharks are in big trouble. The only sharks I ever see in Costa Rica on the Pacific coast are the pelagic threshers jumping. You don't see any other sharks. There's no sharks on the beach. I mean, you got a better chance to get bit by a croc if you're surfing than a shark. But I will say from Texas to Maine, the shark population is, I won't say out of control, but it's kind of out of control.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, we did it. We did it to ourselves.
Oh, 100%.
In the 90s, Noah said that the swordfish and tuna fishery was over harvesting. So, hey, why don't we use shark? Why don't we do longliner for sharks? It's a great source of, and we did. we hurt them bad,
We heard him.
but
Yeah.
really bad. But I think that they recovered a lot faster than anybody thought. The sandbar, because of the size of their fins, was such a valuable fish. Small fish with giant fins, the fins were worth more. And they took a beating, but good golly, man, they are thicker than thieves out there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Or the
The
lemon
last time,
got 2 fins, two dorsal.
oh yeah, well, oh yeah, no doubt. And like I said, a lemon shark in Southeast Florida, sure, in the Keys there's tons of them, but now there's tons of them. I was talking with my old mate Alex. He's running a boat out of Jupiter. He said the other day he had
you can't
lemon
get
sharks
there.
swimming around the boat. Yeah, they're just swimming around the boat.
If you go out of Jupiter, out to the reef, you go scuba dive, guaranteed sharks will, like lemon sharks will come check you out.
100%.
And they're
100%.
they're very like they've learned. It's a learned behavior. They hear a spear gun go off and they're coming. Like
Mm-hmm.
they know what that sound means.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I was in the Keys for mini season, just a couple weeks ago, and I went out to a spot and I shot at a fish I missed. There was no Goliath groupers to be seen anywhere, nowhere. They were not there. And I shot at this fish and I missed, and all of a sudden I see 3 Goliath groupers and a nurse shark come rushing towards me.
Yep.
They know exactly what that sound is. And it's the same thing off the East Coast here, and yeah, the shark population has really rebounded like crazy. And as always is the case, it's a complicated issue, like
Very, very, very.
on one side of the story, the number of sharks that we have now is actually similar to what it used to be before we fucked it all up, right? But people, like, not a lot of people were alive then, right, that are alive now. So people don't remember those times. So, like, compared to what they remember, this is insane. Like, there's just an insane amount of sharks right now. And then when you add on top of that this learned behavior of them figuring out, like, oh, when there's fishermen around, there's easy snacks, right? We now have this like fucked up situation where the population is actually at a healthy place, but because of our own behavior and them learning that behavior, the problem is bigger than the population is, if that makes any kind of sense, right? So
I'm not sure I agree with you, to be honest with you. I mean, again, I've been involved with, there's less commercial fishermen today, maybe more recreational fishermen, but I'm not just talking about South Florida. I'm talking about my buddies in North Carolina that commercial tuna fish, the guys in New England. I mean, geez, we're catching white sharks in Cape Cod now. I mean, I caught one. I couldn't believe it. It was kind of cool, but there's white sharks, there's poor beagle sharks, there's tons of them. It's not that those sharks aren't as big a deal, but I mean, the guys from mid New Jersey down, the guys trying to catch tunas, whether you're in 100 feet of water or 1,000 fathoms, they're getting everything crushed, And,
yeah.
Those guys were doing that in the 70s and 80s, and it wasn't that bad back then. And now it's like,
right. But you also have to keep in mind that these learned behaviors are things that like are passed down, right? Like this evolves. Those learned behaviors can be passed down from generation to generation in animals as well. Sharks are born, and if the older sharks are doing it, they're going to learn from them. And so like over time, they're going to get more tuned in to these learned behaviors. So it makes sense that it's continued to get worse. But like, I don't really know what the answer is here. I don't know what the answer is in terms of like, what do we do about it? It's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. And there is a lot of shark depredation research that's being done. And in fact, there's a YouTube video on Swamp and Stomp that I did a few years back. A good buddy of mine that was in my lab when I was doing my PhD. He's been working on permit shark depredation down in the Keys. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with what is it? Western Dry Rocks off of Key West. So there's a preserve out there, right? And so like you can go out there, you can't catch fish, right? Or you can't catch permit out there. You can't fish during certain times of the year because the shark depredation is so bad. So what do people do? They go, hang out right outside the boundary. They still catch their permit. Well, one of the issues that they started running into in the Keys is like permit fishing, like all the charters, everything. It was all catch and release, right? So it's like, oh, we're not killing the fish. We're just catching them and releasing them. Well, that might be the case, but how many of the fish actually make it to the boat, and how many of the fish that make it to the boat, get back to the school before they get hit by a shark? And so, this research, some of the worst research I've ever done, some of the hardest field work ever. We had to go out there with hook and line and catch permit all day. It was terrible, and so my buddy, he's like using sonar equipment to like look at like how the sharks are reacting when a fish gets hooked up, looking at different tackle options to see like is there a better way to like reduce the number of sharks that are able to take these fish. Lots of questions that they're trying to answer with that research. It led to some really awesome footage. You guys should check it out. It's pretty badass. But I think one of the days, I think we caught 20 permit or 21 or somewhere in that ballpark. And of them, I think half of them got hit by sharks, and the ones that didn't get hit by sharks, like the ones that we actually got to the boat, they were getting chased by sharks. But if you're using heavier tackle, so you can like whoop their asses and get them to the boat quick, your chances of getting that fish in are a lot better. So there's a lot of research going into, like tackle restrictions. Like, are there different tackle restrictions that we can apply that can reduce shark depredation? But that's really specific to certain species. It doesn't really address the shark issue itself, right? I think
I mean, one issue I think that needs to be addressed is, there's a fella that had a shark permit, and he would shark fish. I think it was after July 1st, he can come and do coastal shark long lining. He set small long lines, and he had an MFS observer on board every day. And he was the guy that actually the dive operation found his gear and balled it up. I don't know if you remember, it was on the news. They made a big deal out of it that they got this guy's illegal gear and he was killing sharks and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, they wound up.
Did Mark the shark?
No. His name is, well, I'm not going to say his name. He's a commercial fisherman, not a charter fisherman.
Okay.
Not that guy. That guy's a caricature of it, But this was a commercial fisherman. He's a tile fisherman, grouper snapper guy, and he spent part of his year shark fishing. And for years and years and years, all the years I charter fished out of Palm Beach, come July 1st, the shark guys came in, they long lined a little bit, they caught some bull sharks, they caught this and that, and they had a small quota. But again, learned behavior. The sharks got out of there. And now, because of, again, voting with your heartstrings in the ballot box, oh, shark finning is bad, it's wiping out sharks. Well, now there's DeSantis signed into law, you cannot sell, import, or export any shark fins or shark products in Florida. So now there's no management. The management is leave them alone. And I can tell you 30 years worth of being here that it's unbelievable. I know, and I mentioned the last podcast too, old guy Harvey, we can't kill mako sharks. There's more mako sharks now than there was when I was a kid. And we used to kill little tiny baby ones, and that's wrong. But they put limits in on them, and they put, I mean, I think a female mako had to be 72 inches, which, that's a damn big mako shark. That's a difficult thing to do boat side, but people weren't discriminately killing them. And guess what? Longliners are still killing them because they're still soaking gear overnight.
Yeah.
So, he goes around bragging that he got mako sharks protected. I guess he forgot who made him famous buying his goddamn T-shirts, So good old Judas can do what he wants, but he can kiss my fat white ass. But anyway,
I knew we were going to end up here.
But the point I'm trying to make is this: it's like this knee-jerk thing. Like, no, the old thing is, sharks are a factor of a healthy ecosystem. 100%, I agree. I love those things. I think they're cool as hell. But at the same time, you factor in, learned behavior. There is a shit pile of them. We need to manage it just like every other fishery,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think where we're at right now is like, we've recognized the issue. The data that's been collected on it has not been focused on that issue. And that's where the focus is now. So I think we're going to start seeing, more regulations, put in place that allow for harvest of sharks. I think another issue too is like a lot of people don't want to harvest sharks. I don't think people realize how delicious shark meat actually is. Like,
oh yeah, no, 100%.
It's really good. Like I used
100%.
to keep black tips and stuff like when I was in college.
Absolutely,
I loved them. but there's definitely sort of this like negative, like
Connotation.
like a stigma,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I can't believe you killed a shark. Like you're a piece of shit, and it's like, not
I'll tell
everything
you,
is endangered, like
I'll tell you a good story. So, we catch the Atlantic sharp-nosed sharks, sometimes lots of them,
Yeah.
while we're bottom fishing. And they're small, a fully grown adult is 4 feet long. And at first you were allowed to have 2 per vessel, and then they changed it to like 1 per person. But I didn't want to deal with them. So I would tell people, no, just 2 per. If you wanted it, you can keep it. But there was a guy who was a subcontractor in the marina, and every day I would lay my fish out by species and everything. It was really cool, and I mean, I had a social media presence. It did well for my business. Well, he saw me laying these Atlantic sharp-nosed sharks out, which got filleted. They're already gutted, because tell people, listen, if you want to keep it, we're going to gut it and put it in a box, and it'll stop it from smelling like urea, and be good to eat. Well, this guy went and complained to the marina management that, who the hell is this guy, killing baby sharks and everything. It's just, people are ill-informed. I wish he would have said something to me, because I'd been like, no, that's a fully grown fish. And look, here it is, Of course, I went and had a word with him afterwards and explained to him what the deal was. But, it's just that type of thing. It's like, again, it's ill-informed people thinking they're being do-gooders, and, oh, there's no sharks, and, people that don't spend a day on the water. And like you said, you go to Jupiter, you don't need bait, you don't need chum, just change your RPMs and stop the boat.
Yeah.
And you'll get to see
half
a dozen species of sharks in no time.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the common theme here that keeps coming back with every one of these issues is misinformation. There's just so many people putting this information out on social media, and everybody thinks that they're an expert, and you said it at the beginning of the podcast, like, I'm not one of these guys that's just like yelling trust the science between tequila shots, but to some degree I am saying trust the science. Like, they're, in a lot of cases, like, it's the best thing that we've got, and it's constantly improving. But when we have these ballot box biologists, people that think they're experts but don't know shit about what they're talking about, I know, like,
And that's what I was referring to in the opening, by the way.
yeah, right. Like, but there are a lot of people that do know what they're talking about, but there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, and it's really hard to differentiate between those people sometimes, But you said something there that, like, I want to kind of circle it back to the bears, about the sharks. Shit, now I lost it. You know what? Probably wasn't freaking important.
Gets worse when you get older, trust me.
I know.
Well,
How damn delicious they are.
No, I love it. Bear's great.
I mean, that is a big conversation that comes up too. Like, remember I was telling you about that old lady that was sitting next to me telling about her daughter that's like a bear expert. And she goes, well, what on earth is the desire to kill a bear? I know it's not for food. And I was like, yeah, it is. Like, bear meat's actually pretty delicious. You just, if you think it's
The
not,
fuck do you say?
like, if you think it's not, you're just a shitty cook is what it is. Everyone I know,
That's like that.
Everyone I know that's ever eaten bear said they would never do it again. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but like, which side of the argument are they on? Because if they're on your side, then like, I don't really give a shit what they said. Like, they're gonna like move their argument to fit their narrative no matter what.
I'm gonna get hammered on this, but that that comment about bears, nobody eats them, they taste like whatever, taste like shit. That's how I feel about mule deer. And I hunt the shit out of mule deer, but God, I can't stomach a mule deer. They taste like fucking sage grass to me. So now when
Maybe you're a shitty cook.
I could be. That could be very well be it. Well,
I mean, I will literally go as far as to say that, like, any wild game can taste good. You just have to know how to work with it. So,
so the last several that I've hunted in Colorado, I just donate to, and I have to pay for the processing too, but Hunters Feeding the Hungry in Colorado, that's what I do. Plus it's fucking super expensive if you don't drive to try to ship that shit back.
Oh, yeah.
So, but now elk, that's a different story.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
care what it costs. That son of a bitch is coming back, kind of thing. But mule deer, I'm like, I wouldn't smack Oscar in the face with that rod, son of a bitch. But people love it. Yeah, people love it. And I'm just the one guy that even the burger tastes sagey to me for whatever reason.
I've heard the same, and I haven't done it. I'd really love to do it, but the pronghorn hunt. But I've heard the same thing about pronghorn. There's people that say they love it, and people say that it's disgusting.
I've heard the same thing. I've heard some people say pronghorn is one of the best meats out there, and
Right.
Next time you shoot a mule deer, bring me back a backstrap. I want to try this.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And we've done it. I mean, at camp and marinated it for 2 days, because we're there for, 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
And normally muley, for whatever reason, where it's always a mule deer elk combo. And the priority is always elk.
Mhm.
So you're not hunting for mule deer primarily. And that, of course, you're going to run into them.
Right,
So
100%.
you don't pass a shooter buck. So you take him. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're shooting, just old mature deer. And this is not during the rut either. This is late season. So these hunts we go on are in December, where we're getting around with, the side-by-sides with tracks on them because there's so much snow on the ground kind of thing.
They're worn out by that time.
Oh, they are definitely worn out.
Yeah.
But yes, I will definitely bring you some back next time we do that. It won't be this year. I got to get my knees cut on, so that is out for another year of getting old. But all right, Mark. So we have gone. I mean, this is fucking great. This once again, I felt like we were 15
I
minutes.
actually remember the thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So you were talking about this learned behavior, right? And you kind of talked about like learned behavior, but I don't know if this is where you were going with it, but you said something about like if we start, catching them and killing them, like would they go the other way? Like would they learn to stop doing it? And that's actually something that like I've brought up with bears, and I wonder it might be the solution with sharks as well. Like if you start actually targeting sharks and harvesting them, will they learn that like, wait a sec, these human things maybe not worth the free meal,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been some studies that have been done with bears, and I've tried to make this argument with a few people as well that you look at some of these areas in Florida where we have bears like walking around the neighborhoods, and people are like, oh, they're not even afraid of people. And it's like, yeah, you're right. They don't have any reason to be afraid of people. If you start hunting them, you don't actually have to kill all of them. You just kill a few of them. When they start realizing that we are hunting them, they'll actually start dispersing, which is what we want. We want them to start dispersing, and it'll actually help push them out of those areas and into areas where we need their populations to get better. So I don't know. Maybe the same thing could happen with sharks. Who knows?
Well, I think about the white sharks at Farallon Islands there in the Pacific, and the orcas come and predate on them. And there's actually a research center there on the island, the guys that study the sharks. And I read it was a while ago that they watched a pod of orcas come and kill a white shark. Well, and all those sharks are tagged. They all have the tags on them that they go past the what do you call it, the stations, and they ping in. They all left. They were gone for the whole season. That shark got killed, and the rest are like, we gone.
So we call that trait mediated indirect effects. Basically meaning the effect of a species or an animal being somewhere, a predator being present can change the behavior of the prey. Just them being there. And humans are no different as hunters, I mean,
Right.
we see it all the time with deer, right? You go into an area where nobody's hunting and the deer are like, oh, this is great. I'll just walk around here and
100%.
like daylight. And then you hunt an area a few times and they start smelling you and they go, man, you know what? I want to walk around at midnight now.
Yeah. Well, it's like I used to hunt in South Alabama, and those deer are so pressured, and everybody, deer don't ever look up at the tree stand. BS. You'd be sitting there, and the first thing the doe would do would be like, yeah, how's it going? And then just back in the woods the other way, and
It'd blow at you the whole time.
Well, you did your best to do the wind and everything else, and you sent free, and then here comes this deer walking directly, upwind of you and looking straight at you, and I'm like, ah.
I can tell you, like from a northern hunter perspective. So if you're talking about Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois, places like that, until the first gunshot rings out, the deer act differently, especially during bow season, during pre-rut. You're talking about October time before gun season comes in. Those deer act differently. As soon as that first fucking gunshot rings out, those deer are a different animal. Like they just have a switch and they just do it. Now the rut obviously will fuck everything up and bucks get stupid then, which is great because we get to kill them during the rut. However, once that first gunshot goes off, if it's not rut time, those deer, they just flip a switch and it's totally different.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I've got, on the Kentucky property, I'm running 112-ish fucking cameras now on 1,000 acres. I know exactly what those deer are doing. And yeah, they'll avoid cameras and shit like that, but you can literally set your watch by it as soon as it comes time. I mean, I've got just 6 years worth of data now, and I can tell you exactly what happens as soon as gun season comes in. And it doesn't even have to be on our farm. It could be on the farm next door. Those gunshots come out, and those deer, nocturnal instantly. It's just fucking crazy, and it drives you crazy because you want to hunt them. Yeah, they're coming out. What time sunset? 7:30. They'll be there at 8:15. Every fucking day.
This is exactly why I like to hunt public land, because I hate the idea of like being limited to this little box. So like if they start coming to an area at nighttime, I'm just like, all right, I'll just go figure out where he's hanging out during the daytime, and I can go in any direction and just try and find him. On private land, like you don't have that luxury. A lot of times, where he's hanging out during the daytime is on the other side of the fence where you're not allowed to go.
Right.
So
Damn, we were going to invite you, but I guess you don't want to come.
no, but like I see that question all the time on like Facebook. People are like, "This buck's only coming in at nighttime. Like, what can I do to bring him out during the daytime?" And I'm like,
Shoot him at night.
I'm like,
Go where he is during the day. Yeah, catch him on the way.
I'm like, just go figure out where he is during the day. Like, it's not like these deer just like magically vanish during the daytime.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's 100% true. But on my farm, you've not hunted there yet. You have, so I am very strict. Like I've got areas that are 100% deer 100% of the time. We've created bedding areas and all this other stuff where we do not go in. Period. We let those deer have their free space, and because of that, we've been able to grow the population size, and not only the population size, but the age class of all of these bucks too. So we can go out and selectively harvest that. Public land, obviously, you don't have that choice. You don't have the ability to do that. But the great thing about public land is you can go find them in their fucking beds. You know what they're gonna do. If the acorns are dropping, then you can go find an acorn flat where they're gonna browse, because they do. They don't just fucking sleep all day. They're gonna get up and browse. They're rhythm and pattern feeders, right? So they feed 7 times a day, if I'm not mistaken.
Typically, yeah.
They're gonna get up and feed, and if you know that and know where they're gonna bed, you got a pretty good chance of killing a good deer. And your deer, that one you just shot, that looked like middle of the day-ish kind of time. I couldn't tell on the video. I don't remember the timestamp, but
it was probably like 7 o'clock ish, 7:30. It was getting closer to the end of the day, but like we spotted it in that field probably 6 o'clock. So 6 o'clock, that's still 2.5 hours before dark.
It took you a while to get to that fucking oak tree too.
Oh my God. I crawled to that oak tree. I cut a lot of it out for the video, but it probably took me 20 minutes to go 50, 60 yards,
Yeah, it was good. No, I enjoyed it. And like, that's the other thing too. I'll bring this up real quick. There's one more thing I want to get to. I know we're driving this on, but it's something that it's local here. But one thing about your videos, you use an Insta360 camera. That's super fucking unique, or Insta360 or the GoPro version of it or whatever.
The GoPro one.
You're the only person that I've seen fucking do that. And with the exception, because we film a lot of stuff and I don't like the stitching in it. You can't control that, but you fucking catch everything, like everything.
So I bought that thing a while ago, and God, I can't even remember why I bought it. I just thought it'd be a cool thing to have. And then I started using it during turkey season when I was just kind of running and gunning, like I didn't want to have like a big clunky camera with me. And the problem is like it doesn't really catch detail like off in the distance. The quality of the video is not great, but I can capture shit that like I otherwise would never capture because it's sitting right there on my shoulder. I just push that button and it's going, and like, for instance, with this particular buck that I killed, like I had a cameraman sitting right next to me. Well, he couldn't get the damn camera to focus because of all the grass that was like swaying around. So like the video that he got of me shooting that deer was just like a deer shaped blob behind grass. So in those situations, like either that would have been the video or, use what I got on my GoPro. And like in those situations, that shitty video still better than the shittier video that I got, So I love that thing, but I mean, it does, create some funky looks. Like my face is like cut in half and stuff like that.
Well, and I'm familiar with the cameras, and we use Insta360 too. But so the stitching I get, but it's really a cool thing. It makes me want to, all the Africa hunts we do and the other shit. And there's it's so hard, especially when we've got two camera people with each hunter, and we're trying to get everything filmed. And like you say, fucking grass, brush, that bush there is hard. The camera wants to autofocus on fucking everything, and you're trying to manual focus. It's such a pain in the ass. But like, I'm looking at that camera, like you're really the first person I've seen that use. I'm like, all the shit that we have to like just skip over, and the B-roll that we miss, and it's really important, especially a lot of times especially there, it's longer shots, so we can get the A-roll camera in place. But utilizing that equipment, you don't have to worry about a B cam. You've always got the shot on film. Now, even if you don't get the impact, you've still got the shot no matter what. I'm like, that's really fucking cool. But anyway, so I digress. I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was really cool what you did there.
Yeah, I started using it a while ago, and I just really liked it. There's actually a hunt I did last year. I was pretty proud of this. Like I was hunting in a tree stand, and I picked a spot on purpose that like I could see a long ways, and I was like, I could definitely see some deer like hanging out in this little swamp here and just feeding, because it was all just like marsh grass and like lots of really palatable stuff. And exactly that happened. I got in the tree. I was in the tree for like 20 minutes. Not even. I think literally I got in the tree and finally got all my shit set up and was like, and then like looked over and I'm like, oh fuck, there's a deer right there. So I get my binos and I look, and it's just this doe. She's just chilling like in this field, or not a field, but like in a swamp. And I watched her for like a while, and she's just chilling, feeding. I'm like, I could get over there and kill her, So I just pointed my main camera like at her where I thought I was going to be able to get to her. I zoomed in as far as I could. I started recording. I belayed down out of the tree, and I start sneaking in, and I had the GoPro on my shoulder, so I've got like me sneaking through the woods with it. But I've also got, view of the deer the entire time that I'm sneaking in, and you could see me sneaking in on that camera, and it ended up capturing me shooting the deer from 300-400 yards away. The camera was up in my tree stand, and I snuck in and killed this deer. That was like such a cool hunt to me, to have captured it on 2 cameras, like filming by myself. I thought that was super cool. Like that little GoPro is just like, it's caught some really cool footage.
That ain't easy, man.
No.
I'll tell you what, I never realized it before I started hunting with you doing this stuff. It's a nightmare.
Right. When you've got camera crews out there, the missed opportunities alone.
Oh yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. And you think it's bad with hunting, fishing's even worse. Trying to figure out where the sailfish is going to come and jump, or try to get a bite on film, or try to.
Oh my God!
You've got fish coming into the teasers, and you're trying to pull up on one side, and the fish switches to the other side, and you're trying to run 1 or 2 cameras, and as bad as hunting is, and it does suck. Listen, I'll give you props though. Self-filming a hunt fucking sucks. It is the worst thing in the world. I fucking hate it.
It sucks, but there's also like aspects of it that I really enjoy. Like now that I've gotten better at it too, and I've got kind of a system. Like by the end of turkey season, if you watch some of my turkey hunts from last year, like I self-filmed them, start to finish, the whole thing. And, it was really great content. Like, and in fact, I was super proud of this. Like the second turkey I killed last year, I actually took a small little tripod with me, and I had my big camera on a tripod and the GoPro on my shoulder, and I was self-filming a run and gun turkey hunt, with 2 cameras, and I got, the shot. Like it was awesome footage. So I don't know, like there's a certain like aspect that like I'm really proud of being able to do that, and it's definitely not easy, but I really enjoy it, and I love being able to show this to my friends, to the followers, and who knows, maybe when I have a kid at some point in time, like being able to show them like, once upon a time your dad was a fucking badass. Now
That's perfect. No, and listen, it's hard. I mean, coming from people that, and I've been doing it for years now, and, with professionals, with camera crew, with camera people that do it it's fucking hard to get it with professionals. You go out there and try to do that shit by yourself when you're doing everything. That's next level kind of badass right there. Yeah. If you can catch that shit, you fucking made it.
You mentioned Mark getting your system down. I mean, the amount of time it would take to get the process, like, how many mistakes did it take to get, okay, I need to do this now in this order and change that,
Like in the beginning, it's like something you have to learn when you're filming your hunt is like to reach for the camera first. Like, it's like you'd be sitting in a tree stand, and you're like, oh, there's a deer, grab my bow. Like that's like the thought process, right? Like you have to like train yourself to be like, oh, there's a deer, get the camera. Like, and then like the camera comes first. Like, and the amount of times like I've missed opportunities to shoot a deer because I was trying to film it instead of just grabbing the bow right away. Like if I just reached for the bow and fucking drew up and flung an arrow, like I could have killed it, because it all happened super fast. I missed those opportunities because I'm trying to film it. And so like you have to like train yourself to like go for the camera first. But also like the way that I set up is like different than what I might do without the camera, because I want to have the time to see a deer coming in so that I can be ready with the camera, so like everything about the way that I hunt, like kind of revolves around that camera. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that. It definitely influences your decisions, and in a lot of cases like limits you.
No, it absolutely, as a content creator, the key word is content. If you can't create content listen, anybody can, okay, there's only so much B-roll of spot and stalk and sitting in a fucking tree stand that works. And you'll get some people to watch that, and you can make some short little reels out of it that are kind of catchy at first. But after a while, people are going to say, if you don't fucking shoot something, I'm done watching you. Well, folks, sorry about the impromptu cut from the podcast. Unfortunately, Riverside, when recording this, decided for some strange reason that they needed to cut the last 45 minutes of the podcast. But have no fear, we had a great time with Mark, and he will definitely be back on the show. But until next time, remember, live free, hunt hard, keep chasing that adventure.